Now we all know that it is the age of investment, and more people are demanding for Islamic banking and products to increase and be introduced in well-known financial institutions. As we just heard the talk of Brother Talal Yassin, it's obviously increasing, and we would like to, the community in Australia particularly demands that to become more of a reality to compete with existing financial institutions. Now we have another expert in on this topic. We have Mr. Hakan Ozyon, who is the founder of Hejaz Financial Services and has been the head of the organization since its inception in January 2013. Under his leadership and management, the company has grown from having one office to now having 7 offices across 2 states. Expanding the company globally is also on his radar. He has been constructing Islamic investment portfolios for over 10 years and is regarded as one of Australia's leading Islamic investment expert in not only Australia but Australasia. Hakan is also the director of Islamic Finance Services Council of Australia, where he plays an integral role in the growth of the council and representing the Muslim community's concern on financial matters. He also has established free financial literacy workshops for the Islamic community and has provided free financial counseling to the Muslims in financial difficulty. Ladies and gentlemen, please make Mr. Hakan Ozyon feel welcome.
Assalamu alaikum. It's great to see the brothers and sisters here, and Hejaz is more than happy to be part of this as a sponsor as well, and alhamdulillah. And just touching on Brother Talal, I acknowledge what he said, and I thank him for making actually my job much easier, because essentially what he's describing or explaining about Islamic investments and superannuation, Alhamdulillah, it is, well, obviously I'm a bit biased. Obviously we think it's much better. When we create portfolios, for example, you see that there's certain criteria in Islamic investments which are much, much better than conventional investments, which essentially allows the portfolios to actually perform much better over a long period of time. So alhamdulillah, I thank Talal for that, brother Talal, and he's sort of made my job a little bit easier. So what I've been given as a task is to look at a holistic view, essentially looking at Islamic investments and finance within the global economy and how it sort of interacts and what sort of benefits it can bring. So he's given the micros, I'll inshallah give the macros. And with the figures in the forecast with the Australian Islamic community, we sort of come up with different figures. We believe there's approximately 1 million Muslims in Australia now, and our researchers come up with figures of about 10 million in about by the year 2060, inshallah. So more and more we need these sort of services coming through for the Islamic community to actually provide, and honestly, we haven't got enough crescent wealth, we haven't got enough Hejazes in Australia. We're going to need much more in the future, inshallah. So the way we look at it is, and I speak to Tala all the time, is that we are working, the Islamic organisations, institutions are sort of, we work together, if you know what I mean. It's not we're competition to each other, it's we need more of them. So inshallah we welcome more brothers and sisters to perform these sort of services, inshallah. Just a quick, where are we? Just a quick disclaimer for the lawyers here, so they can see that. We'll put the disclaimer up, yeah? We can't get sued now. Yes, because we are financial planners and portfolio managers, just got to make sure that it's just general information that we're giving today. Now, let's just start off with a few attributes of a human quality through the Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we've got to understand that financial markets and institutions are run by, essentially, participated and managed by people. And people have certain qualities. So when you're dealing in the financial and investment markets and economies, we need to understand that, yeah, people have elements of greed that's instilled in them. So when you're actually dealing in there, you need to understand that as well. It's an integral part of the markets. And also, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, wealth is actually withheld by some certain people because it may lead for them to transgress the boundaries that's set by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it ultimately goes to their destruction. I mean, a good example of that would be the Ottoman Empire, for example. Me being a Turk, I can probably talk about the Ottoman Empire. When they started out back in the 14th or 15th century, they grew and grew, and they took virtually half the world. And towards the end, wealth, money, power, it got to them. Essentially, there is danger with wealth, and greed does play a part in that. So, yeah, that's one thing that we've got to be careful of as well, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows us best. Well, one of the features of the financial markets is obviously interest. I mean, in a conventional portfolio, you'll find that interest is prevalent, and essentially, because that's prevalent, we need to come up with alternatives because of the commandments of Allah. So we need to come up with portfolios Islamically, which obviously don't include that sort of stuff. Well, be it interest, be it other things as well. I mean, Tala's already touched on that, so I'm not going to go further into that. And in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not declare war on anyone except for those who deal in riba. So it essentially says the importance of keeping away from riba. So what I'm trying to emphasize on here is we all know that riba is haram. But unfortunately, what happens is when you see hadith, people start to become immune to this. It's getting to the stage where the communities actually start to think that, yes, it's haram, but what I'm doing is allowed, permissible. It's getting to the stage where haram has started to become like halal. And it's becoming obvious. People, as I said, they're seeing hadith, they know it's haram, But all of a sudden they try to justify that it's okay to do certain things. And this is a problem in the community, and it's becoming prevalent. And I think we need to stand back and say, look, this greed that is coming upon us from the conventional system, we need to stay back from this. Because at the end of the day, we are Muslims, and we are different. I'm pressing the wrong button, am I? Okay. So essentially wealth creation, that's what we do as well at Hejaz, and what we do is wealth creation, accumulating wealth for the Muslim brothers and sisters. But again, if it's done in the lawful way, the way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has told us to do it, then it's actually a blessing. And there'll be better in that wealth. And unlawfully acquired wealth, and there's a lot of it happening in the community, well, essentially that's greed and corruption. So we've got to be careful to keep away from this sort of thing. And at no stage is wealth given to people for them to have a haq and that they're hoarding. It's not their haq to hoard and say this is all mine. We see that with within the world, where we see a lot of people actually accumulating wealth and try to make as much as they can. They're just building, building, building and hoarding it. At the end of the day, this is an amana from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He has given us wealth and money and assets as an amana, and we've got to use that accordingly and acquire that accordingly. And this is very important to instill into ourselves. And also, that second last one there, measured by benefits accrued to society. Well, at the end of the day, we did touch on it before about social responsibility and that sort of stuff, but we need to bring that to a larger scale. In that, at the end of the day, yeah, obviously there's zakat and so forth, but I think sadaqah, and there's a lot of things you need to give back to the community. At the end of the day, wealth as is measured by the benefits to society. Okay, now greed, as we saw with ayat, it leads to so many problems within the community. With jealousy, we tend to compare against other people, and we see this all the time within our community, where someone will have a three-story house, and now I've got to get a four-story house. It seems to happen all the time. Well, they get a $250,000 car, I've got to get a $350,000 car. At the end of the day, greed leads to so many problems within the community, and we need to always remind ourselves that we are different. We are Muslims. Yeah, we are the leaders of this world, and essentially the ummah. And it leads obviously to dishonesty, cheating, lying, shallow relationships. And essentially, you're saying that only people that give me benefit, that I'm going to be friends with them from now. So there's issues here that greed leads to so many problems, and of course, lack of focus on true meaning of life. We've got to remind ourselves why we're here in this world. We're here in this world for the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not to get three-story houses and another investment property and another, and more money, more money, more money. However, we are, as I said, I am contradicting myself because we are wealth managers, but what we do is we wealth manage within an Islamic environment, and there is barakah in that. So let's get to some charts. So what happens? With every boom comes a bust. Essentially, if you look at the charts there, you see booms and busts over there. And even the latest one, which is the Nasdaq, you'll see from 1990 to 1999, it went up over 900%. Everyone thought it was never going to come to an end. They said that this will go forever. How do you make over 900% in 9 years? Again, the US gone up 394% in that time period, and then of course the Great Depression came. What we find over history is there's a lot of booms and there's a lot of busts. Unfortunately, what we see in the community is that they think that certain booms are never going to finish, and that's what all the other people have fallen in those traps as well. So with wealth management, you've got to be careful. You've got to be careful how you do your investments as well. You've got to not get too greedy, and you've got to make sure you do it Islamically, and you've got to make sure that you time it well as well, because at the end of the day, every boom comes to a bust. Every single boom. There's never ever been a boom where it hasn't busted. And what we're seeing, for example, in the Australian markets is the Australian property boom. So I talk to a lot of brothers and sisters, and they say, brother, you can never, it's guaranteed. You'll make money on property, you can't lose. Well, then you're saying that it's a guarantee, there's no risk here? Well, if it's guaranteed, then we've got issues with halal. There's no such thing as guaranteed there. So we've got to be careful how we do it, because in the history, in the past, many people have made these mistakes. Just other booms that have come. As you can see, Germany over 1,000%, and then the bust comes. As I said, booms come with busts, and as we can see with Australia, a small boom comes with a small bust. So that also is there. So the smaller the boom, the smaller the bust, and the bigger the boom, the bigger the bust usually. So we've got to be careful how we go about the investments as well. We can't assume that every investment you're going to make a lot of money. The way it works is you've got to be realistic and you've got to be careful. Other volatilities, the growing volatility around the world. We see ups and downs, volatility all over the place. You can look at the oil prices, you can look at housing starts. As you can see at the right there, over there, that's the subprime crisis which led to the GFC. You can see how it's gone up for a long, long period of time, and then it collapsed. And so many times has their housing starts or housing price or housing property booms, and it's gone to a bust as well. We saw in China a couple of years ago, it went bust as well. Okay, and China thought it was never going to bust, but they did. We saw it around the world as well. We saw it in many places. So house is not immune to falling. I mean, stats and numbers and graphs don't lie. Once again, we see the unemployment rates. You've got to remember, with these ups and downs, there's a lot of pain and suffering. And this is what we need to understand. People are losing their jobs, they're losing their money, they're losing their houses, they're losing their cars, and it leads to divorce and a lot of problems within the communities. There's a lot of pain and suffering here. So don't look at these graphs and say, okay, there's just ups and downs. There's a lot of issues here. Within the world, within the global economy, there's a lot of problems. As you can see, the Dow Jones over the 100 years, those little falls towards you see, they're recessions. And it's led to a lot of, as I said, heartache, a lot of pain. So we can see there's another boom right at the end there, 2016. Well, booms always finish with busts, don't they? Never goes up forever. That's the Shanghai Index in China. We see here, that's the GFC. So what happened from 2006 to 2007, you see a massive increase. Hundreds and hundreds of percents there. Everyone thought that they were making billions there. Everyone thought they were going to be the wealthiest people in the world. Well, as it turns out, the people that invested here have still not made their money. It's gone down again in the last year. What we see is the people that invested in 2007 have still not made their money back. And it's 10 years on. Yeah, so this is investment markets. We've got to get realistic here. There's a lot of money to be made, but you've got to be careful how you make that money. So why is there a lot of volatility? What's happening within the global economy and the financial markets? Obviously, we've touched on greed. Derivatives, there's a lot of innovation within financial products. I'll give you one of those, a couple of examples of that. CFDs, for example, you can leverage virtually 5 to 100, or say you can put $100,000 and you get literally $2 million worth of assets. So you get $1.9 million loaned instantly. So there's a lot of leverage going on here, margin lending and so forth. There's so many, like Forex market, and we see a lot of Muslims within the Forex market, even though it's not halal. What happens with the Forex market is it can be leveraged up from 1 to 100. So you put $10,000, you literally got $1 million in currency. So these are all haram. And this is what's making all this volatility. Short selling is a disease. What's happening with these charts, for example, we'll go back. For example, here, there was a record amount of short selling happening, which made the Shanghai Index fall. So what it is people are borrowing shares without the person knowing, and they're selling it off. And when they sell so much of it, it just collapses the markets. And this is also forbidden in Islam. So you see that all these innovations that are coming through is what's causing all this volatility and heartaches and essentially making a lot of people lose money. But it all starts with the greed and the herd mentality. So we see leverage speculations. It's like a gambling now. Investments are like gambling now. It's just we're going to do this and we're going to make money off it straight away and then we sell it. Be it property, be it shares, be it whatever it is. And it's all about leverage. Let's just get it. We speculate, we're going to make money. Monetary policy, Keynesian economics theories are coming through here. Basically, they're saying that if there's problems in the economy, if there's a recession, let's essentially just borrow. That's what governments are doing right now. And they're borrowing so much that they can't pay it back. So there's a lot of problems within the global economy, the global financial system. We're talking about conventional here. These things are all are not permissible in Islam. And these are the ones that are causing the problem. Well, is leverage good? You go to a financial planner, a non-Islamic one, okay, go to Mark Smith, okay, and what he'll recommend is get a lot of get a loan and buy property. That's what he'll say. So what we find in the world is that's the GFC, and the problem with the GFC was there was a lot of debt. That's what caused the GFC. But what's happened since the GFC, it's actually gone even higher. There's actually more problems now. People haven't learnt their lesson. And you look at household debt in Australia, it's actually gone more than that. That's a little bit outdated, that one. It's actually gone a lot higher than that. It's actually the highest in the world right now, at about 127%, which is just ridiculous. And essentially the US, the subprime crisis, the GFC actually occurred when they're at 120%. Australia's at 127% now. It's unsustainable, the debt in Australia, particularly property, because 80% of the household debt is actually for property houses. So is leverage good? Absolutely not. We look at the wealth per person, it's actually gone down, even though the debt's gone up. We've seen the debt going up. It's essentially the financial plan to tell you it'll tell you to go and get debt so you can actually make more wealth. But what we've found is wealth has actually fallen. And disposable income has actually fallen. So how come it's not making more money for you? Because there's a time when you get too much debt. And that's where it is right now in the world. There's actually a problem right now in the financial system and the economic system. Recessions, they just keep coming and coming. It's just endless. These are all the recessions in the US, essentially since the Great Depression. They thought that Keynesian economics and spending and stimulating demand in the world was going to fix it. It hasn't fixed it. It's actually made it worse. There's just recessions non-stop. That last one there's the GFC, as you can see there, but it's just endless. Recessions just keep coming, and you've got to remember, with every recession, there's a lot of issues with people. People are actually suffering. And essentially, the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer. That's what's happening. With every recession, that's what happens. Global debt numbers, well, there we are. $230 trillion, which is 313% of global GDP, of global output. Global output is actually sitting at $75 trillion. That's all the production that's happening in the world. And global is 230. So let's put that in perspective here. Let's say, for example, you had a $230,000 loan, okay, and your income is $75,000. So we're going into thousands, not trillions here. What they will tell you to do is, okay, so out of the $75,000, put $30,000 aside and pay off your debt. And over 20 years, you'll pay it off. Well, what's happening with governments are actually, they're not putting anything aside. They're actually getting more debt. They're actually getting more debt to just pay the interest off. Just in the last, as we see here, since the GFC, another $57 trillion has been gone on top of the debt just to service the debt itself. So it's actually going backwards. And there's problems. It's just accumulating, and essentially, do you think that $230 trillion is going to be paid off? Absolutely not. It's never going to be paid off. And the last time this sort of thing happened, World War II broke out. Not that I'm scaremongering here, so no scaremongering here. I'm just giving you information. Numbers, as I say, and charts do not lie. And in my business as portfolio manager, that's what I do. I analyse, I look at charts, I look at figures, because they don't lie. Essentially, they tell you the truth. That's one thing that doesn't tell you a lie. So what we're seeing in these times of growing debt and growing an accumulation of problems within the global financial sector and the economic sector is there's a lot of promises happening. Now people, to get your money, what they're saying is, oh, we're going to give you 40% return, or we're going to give you 60%. I've even seen people give 100% return in 1 year just to get their money. Essentially, they're producing a Ponzi scheme. And what we're seeing even in China is a massive Ponzi scheme in some sort, in a situation where you see, go to towns, you go to cities, and it's just vacated. There's brand new buildings with no one in it. They have never leased it out. Whole cities. Yet the property people that are building these buildings are making a fortune, literally billions and billions of dollars. And the people who are investing into this, they don't even know that it's empty. So you've got to be careful where you invest. It's very important because a lot of people get burnt. In the investment world, where there's a lot of greed and a lot of promises happening around the world, you've got to be careful what you're doing. you've got to go to a professional. Otherwise, even the professional, you've got to make sure you get the right one. And that's why we're saying the Islamic, you come to the Islamic ones. Be it other one, be it Hejaz, be it whoever it is. You've got to make sure, because there's vultures out there. Essentially, it's going to come crumbling down one day. It's not if anymore, it's when. Okay, so where do we put the Islamic solutions? I mean, Brother Talal touched on it already, the benefits of Islam. And of course, we know that whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually tells you to do, is actually, there's always something in it. It's true. You can't go wrong if you follow Allah's commandments. Essentially, what they're doing conventional is they're actually selling money when there's no money. They used to have a time when there was actually an asset backing. There used to be gold, and they used to give currency accordingly. What they're doing now is there's no more gold backing. They're just printing off money. They don't even print it off anymore. It's just digital, going on a computer, putting in numbers. So it's just accumulating. They think that this is stimulating the global economy. They think by just making money from nothing, that you can build, and you can build. And the economies are growing. But we've seen that there's going to be a detrimental effect here. It eventually does come crumbling down. So for all this greed that's happening in the world, there has to be a penalty that comes with it as well. There has to be. You can't just keep doing that. They sell assets before they exist, and in Islamic you can't do that. I mean, what we see with all this, the economic disparity as well, we're seeing a lot of classes, different classes, we're seeing a lot of poor people in the world now. So what we see is, essentially almost 3.5 billion people in the world now earn less than $1 a day. There's actually less than 80% of people in the world that have a refrigerator. So the problem is we live in Australia, we don't see this. But the problem is when the wealthy are getting more wealthy, like people in Australia, the poor are unfortunately getting poorer. And Islam this can't be the way. Islam doesn't permit this. That's why the Islamic way is the fair way of doing it. Because at the end of the day, everyone has to share, everyone has to prosper. Greed is kicking in all the time, and unfortunately within our community as well. What's happening is our community is actually following the conventional way as well, unfortunately. And we shouldn't be that way. So essentially, the Islamic way is, if we adopt the Islamic way within the financial system, you won't have all this happening, all this volatility, all this disparity, all these issues you wouldn't have, and all this suffering. I mean, I can go through these one by one, but obviously, another time we can go through that, because I can concentrate. That's just a whole lecture in itself. I can go through 2 hours through that. But yeah, maybe another time. But essentially, the Islamic solution is the only way to go. But last slide essentially is the Islamic investments that we do as well. It actually caters to all those 6 problems that I showed before. Essentially, they eliminate that. So at the end of the day, what I always say to my clients is that you can earn 30%, you can earn 40% a year. Whatever Allah gives, that's your rizq. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has written your rizq. Yeah? But make sure it's in the Islamic way so there's barakah there. And if He gives you 5%, alhamdulillah as well. But the problem with the conventional system is we're seeing the problems. We're seeing with the charts what the issues are. So we've got to try to keep away from this. At the end of the day, we are Muslims. Yeah? And we need to keep our identity, we need to keep that being a slave to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, basically. We can't keep ourselves away from that. So we shouldn't kid ourselves. We shouldn't try to kid ourselves by saying, look, at the end of the day, I'll give you another example. I had a sister that came into my office, actually about 3 days ago, just before I came here. And we were discussing Islamic finance with her. And she goes, look, I went to, and I'll give the name MCCA, and she goes, I didn't believe that they were halal. And she goes, so I didn't take them up. So I said, what did you do then? She goes, I went to the Commonwealth Bank. Okay. I said, well, do you go to a Nando's or something like that? She goes, yeah, I go to Nando's. Well, I said, how do you know Nando's halal? She goes, well, they've got a certificate. Well, I go, I'm sure MCCA's got a certificate as well. She goes, yeah, but I don't believe it. Well, I said, hold on, let me get this right. You went to Nando's, you believe their certificate, but you don't believe MCCA's certificate. Is that right? She goes, yeah. Well, I said, sister, the problem is here is that if MCCA was cheaper than Commonwealth Bank, you would say it's halal. It only suits you, that's what it is. Because it suits you, you'd rather go there. That's the problem. We can't just keep kidding ourselves. We've got to do what's right. And at the end of the day, if we're saying that we're Muslims, we've got to make sure we practice as Muslims. So, alhamdulillah, inshallah, yeah?